I was trying to think about what I wanted to talk about today, and I thought we should do different instances. So, like sometimes I read from the book, sometimes I talk about financial stuff, and sometimes I want to talk about framework application. So, it's great to know and understand the principles, but how do you apply it? Hey, Four Walls, nice to see you in Instagram land. So, one of the ways we can apply this, especially if we're thinking about ourselves as an employee, for instance, right? So if we're looking at HR thing and saying, how do we apply this type of thinking or framework in our company or in our as employees, right? So one of the things to recognize is that your employment contract. What is that? What is your employment contract? Your employment contract is a contract. And the clearer that contract is, and this is what I try to talk about with my clients down the legal side, right? If you're hiring an independent contractor, you're hiring a employee, you want to get very, very clear in the contract about what they are responsible for and what you expect from them. If you're just if you're just like, okay, well, I'm hiring you as a receptionist, blah blah, but you don't really say, this is how I expect you to be as a receptionist, these are the qualities we're looking for, this is how I expect you to kind of be on the ball or on the job, show initiative, right? If you don't really lay that out for the person, and then they don't do that, right? Sometimes when they first start, they're going to be like all rah rah and doing it, but after a while, it kind of tapers off. Um, and if they didn't recognize that that was part of their agreement, right, then it's kind of hard to hold them accountable for it. You can fire them, but how helpful is that really? I mean, you want them to do the job that you hired them to do, and you want them, hey, Mike, you want them to uh, do it in the way that you would like them to do it. But if you haven't explicitly expressed what that is, it's hard to hold them accountable for not doing it. Right? So, this is an application of this framework in an HR setting when we're talking about employees and employers. So, that's one of the biggest things that I see go wrong a lot of times is that employers don't have a uh, robust enough list of what it is that they're really looking for. When you hire somebody for a job, you hire a virtual assistant, whatever that is, and you say, look, I need you to complete these tasks in this time. I expect you to not go on vacation until these are done, right? I expect you to like really like be specific. And if that person reads that and is like, this is not the kind of job I want, I don't see that as this, then okay, that's fine, right? You shouldn't have hired them in the first place. If they read that and they're like, oh yeah, for sure, I would do that anyway. This is who I am. Then you know you're on the right track with the person you're hiring. So being really, really specific, not just about like these are your tasks, right? But like I expect these tasks to be done by the end of each day. If I give you a task, I expect it to be done by here, right? Like getting much more specific in the employment contract helps people because if you and that person for sure are going to have a different standard of how things should be done, and this is true of any relationship, it's true of love relationships, personal relationships. You are just going to have a different standard. You come from different backgrounds, cultures, and I don't even mean like ethnic cultures of countries. I mean like within family dynamics, there are different cultures. Each family is its own little mini culture, right? Of how much did they impress hard work or respect or certain types of skills or getting the job done within that family. You don't know. So if you don't express it clearly in your contract, how can you expect to get that back? Then you end up just going through one person after another, trying to find someone that has these qualities, but you haven't even expressed out in your hiring that these are the qualities that you're looking for, right? And that these are the qualities you want to make sure that person has. So, what I always try to encourage is I say, if you're hiring somebody, hiring an independent contractor or something, then put really clear milestones for what you expect them to do by what date, what they need to have done, right? And just like nail that in there because people need structure. People need to understand what's expected of them in order to deliver it. And so that is that's really an important critical part for HR people, right? What's another thing and that is really, I think, the responsibility of the employer to do that right. Okay. What's another issue that can come up? And once you have that in the contract, then you can tell them, like you have that in your manual, whatever that is, and that might end up being a long one. You can be like, hey, this is the job. This is the job requirements. This is what we expect. This is how we expect you to show up, to dress, to whatever it is. If you really put it all in there, then that person knows there is a standard there and they know that they can choose to do it or not. But if you don't tell them, they can't, right? Same thing happens in personal relationships where one person is expecting the other person to do a certain thing, cook for them, or spend a certain amount of time together each day, or whatever that is. But if they haven't really expressed that and say, "This is how I see a relationship," the other person doesn't know. They don't do it, and then the first person gets angry about it, right? But is that really fair? Is it fair to fire the employee for doing something when you didn't tell them, right? Is it fair to get angry at someone and have a fight with them when you didn't actually go through and tell them what it was you really expected from them or from the relationship? It's only by being upfront you give people the choice, not just the punishment. You got to give people the choice to do it well or not to start with. And that takes a lot more work, really. That does take a lot more work on the part of the employer or the part of the person taking the responsibility in that relationship for this. But when you think about all the hassle that you go through having to hire and fire and then pay somebody and hire and fire again and doing that multiple times, boy, oh boy, it is way more effective to do that up front, right? To get that really clarity up front and make sure you get the right person in the door, or a person at least who really knows what's expected. So that is an HR application of this framework, because it's the description of the deal, right? There are 5 elements to the deal, and one of those elements needs to be clarity in the terms. You have to know what you are accepting to be able to accept it, right? Someone has to make an offer and you have to have acceptance, but you have to be clear on what those terms are if you're going to enforce the terms. So that is a really important part of any contract, but it's something that can oftentimes be missing in employment contracts, right? Or another aspect of something that needs to be made clear when we're talking about employer-employee relationships is the conduct that's expected in the office, right? Like if you have listed in your manual and you're saying like, don't tell these type of jokes, this is not appropriate. Don't call women babe or baby or something like that, right? Make sure that you get permission, right, before you touch another person. Perhaps they don't want that. Like if you can be really clear, like just show respect for the other person in an acknowledgement that they fully own their own body and that they get to make full choice about what's happening with their body, right? That they are the owner of their mind and their ideas, and that you're going to respect that. And if someone comes up with an idea and someone else tries to jump in and sort of claim that idea for their own, okay, that would be an example of a violation of the third principle of the creation. See? So this is another thing that happens all the time in companies where one person has the idea and someone else tries to jump in and pretend it was their idea, okay? And then to have other people there, to have the person himself, but also to have other people stand up and say, hey, wait, no, that was Susan's idea, it's not yours, Tom, okay? Then that is a principle of not violating other people's creations. And when you have that kind of action in a company, right? When the bosses and the people are following those kinds of principles, you will find that everybody will be much happier. They won't have all of this resentment, right? And they will be able to work together better when those principles of their own autonomy and their creations are respected. So that's how these principles, there's just a couple ways of how these principles create better work environments for employers. So that was the application for today of the principles. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you guys can use this application in your own lives and in whatever it is you're working on, whatever contracts you are trying to create or agreements or relationships. Remember to be clear about what you want. There's all kinds of personal development and relationship shops, right? And that's one of the main things they say. Be clear, express what you need, be clear about what it is you expect. Otherwise, you can't expect that the other party is going to know, right? This is all the relationship books say. So, how important is this? That's what this principle is. And it is because you have to have an offer. You have to have clear terms of that offer that the other person can accept. If they didn't hear the terms, they can't accept it, okay? Then you can't be mad at them for not doing it because you didn't tell them. It was your responsibility to be clear and to express it. So, these are one of the fundamental principles of relationships, contracts, business, all of that. So that's a really good one to focus on. Let me know how that works for you. If you get more clarity in expressing and in asking too. Sometimes I ask, I'm like, what is it you really expect? What is it you're really looking for? And oftentimes that person, especially in personal relationships, they haven't really thought about it. They have all of these kind of hidden, vague expectations in their brain that they haven't really expressed clearly, even to themselves. So they have to walk through that process of expressing them and saying, wow, is this reasonable or not? Right? Because if they just allow those expectations to hide in the background, they never have to face them and they never have to ask, is this reasonable? Is this really what I should be expecting from someone in a relationship? So even asking the question, if you're coming up against that, whether it's in a business relationship or in personal relationship, to ask the other person, right? What are your expectations here? What really is going on? What do you expect? And if you're afraid of conflict to the point that you can't do this, then that's something else you got to work on. You got to go work on your internal fear and oftentimes the childhood trauma or things that are keeping you from being able to express your boundaries clearly, to be able to confront, okay, but not attack. You're confronting the person and getting them to speak up about what it is their real expectations are. It might make them uncomfortable, but in order to create a good relationship, sometimes people have to get uncomfortable, right? They got to go in and they got to figure out what it is. What do I really mean? What do I really want? What do I really expect, right? Is this reasonable? Is this something I should be asking for, right? When you bring those things up and out into the open and put them out there, it allows both of you to really look at it and say, hey, what's going on here? Is this good? And if you can recognize, no, it's not, then you let it go. And if you say, no, this is good, then you've given the other person a chance to be on the same page with you about it. So that's why clarity in expressing our wants and needs and what we expect, whether it's in business or in personal relationships, is critical. And if you don't do it, you're really being unfair to the other person, because then you end up punishing them for something that they didn't know. How many times did we experience that as children? I'm sure I know I did a lot, right? Where I experienced that feeling of being in trouble for something and I didn't know what I'd done. And I didn't know what was wrong. And here I was getting slapped or smacked or whatever for it. And I was just like, what did I do? So we don't want to bring that into our adult relationships because that happens a lot, doesn't it? Okay. So I hope you guys have a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.